Okay, now for the last part of our lesson, we're going to be talking about dividing sign numbers. We talked about multiplying sign numbers. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete all these examples down here. Let's see, we'll do that this way, and then we'll include these notes right underneath our notes for multiplying sign numbers. So when we divide sign numbers, it's going to be pretty much exactly the same as multiplying them, which is nice because it's nice to have consistency in our rules here. So again, the product of two numbers with the same sign is a positive number. The quotient, when we divide, the quotient of two numbers with the same sign is also a positive number. You just have to remember one rule for multiplication and division because it's the same. If we have two numbers that have the same sign and we're dividing them, when they divide out, it's going to end up being a positive number, even if both numbers are negative. And then the other rule is the same too. The quotient of two numbers with opposite signs is a negative number. Let's take a look at some examples of this, and we'll see how this is applied in some real problems here. So we're going to work some simple ones, but let's take a look at some real situations where this might come up. What if we have negative 16 divided by negative 2? Well, you can do 16 divided by 2. That's just 8. But now let's think about the signs. I have a negative 16 and a negative 2, the same sign on both numbers. That means that in the end, I have to have a positive number. So negative 16 divided by negative 2 is positive 8. What if I have 2.8? Again, we're dealing with rational numbers because it's a real number, and this should work for all real numbers. So here I have a decimal number divided by negative 7. Well, 2.8 divided by 7, that's like 28 divided by 7 almost. So that's almost going to be like 4, except I have to move the decimal place one place to the left. So it's going to be 2.8 divided by 7 would be 0.4. If you need to do the long division to see that, feel free, absolutely feel free to do that. But now I'm dividing two numbers that have opposite signs. So it's not just going to be 0.4. I have to keep in mind that because they have opposite signs, I need to include a negative sign out front. It's going to be the opposite of 0.4. All right, one last little piece to our lesson here. This has been kind of a longer lesson, but it's important to note this too as we add and divide, or we multiply and divide numbers. Anytime we divide numbers, dividing numbers is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. We talked about that earlier in the lesson too, when we were talking about the inverse property of multiplication. We kind of talked about it, but it's important for you to note that when we divide numbers, it's the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. And that's always true regardless of what numbers you're dividing. So we use this with fractions all the time, and that's what the examples are going to be of. But this works with non-fractional, like whole numbers or integers as well. And our rules for multiplying and dividing carry along with this as well. Now keep in mind, we're going to use the rules for multiplying technically, even though they're actually the same rules. We're going to use the rules for multiplying because we're going to change every one of these problems to a multiplication problem instead of a division problem. You know, this is just as we're going along here, I just want to note this is very similar to how we would change subtraction problems into addition problems, where we would add the opposite of a number. This is going to be the same sort of thing, but this time we're multiplying the reciprocals. When we divide, it's the same thing when we multiply the reciprocal. So let's take a look. If we have negative 2 over 3 divided by, and I don't have a good divided by symbol, so I'm always just going to use that slash there to show divided by. But just keep in mind that it should be, if you look in your book, you'll see the divided by symbol there, maybe a little more clearly. Divided by negative 3 over 4, okay? So 2 over 3 divided by negative 3 over 4. Well, actually, this is a little bit simpler than this. I'm going to change this divided by to a multiplicative sign, a multiplication sign. And then 3/4 instead of 3/4 becomes 4 over 3, okay? So I'm just going to make this look the same. 2 over 3 times 4 over 3. And this is the exact same problem. Now, you know, when we multiply fractions, it's actually pretty simple. We just multiply across the top. 8 divided by, multiply across the bottom, 9. So our answer is 8 divided by 9. And let's just look back. My fractions initially had the same sign, negative 2/3, negative 4/3. So when I multiply it, my result must be positive. Okay, so we're just doing the same sort of math you've been doing, but now we're just keeping in mind that if we have two negatives multiplied together, it's positive. Two positives multiplied together is positive. But if it's one negative and one positive, then we're going to have a negative value at the end. Let's take a look at one more example. 2/9 divided by negative 3/5. And I'm going to put that in parentheses like they do here. Negative 3/5. Okay. And let's see. I don't like this division symbol, so we're going to change that to a multiplication symbol. And then I need to flip my fraction around, so it's 5/3. Then I just do the multiplication problem. Multiply the numerators. 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. The denominators, 9. Oh, I should forget about that negative 10. 2 times 5 is 10. And then in the denominator, 9 times 3 is 27. So I'm left with 10/27s. That can't really be reduced in any way. But then I need to think about negative or positive. Well, because I multiply numbers with opposite signs, I must have a negative number at the end, negative 10/27s. And that is how you do this type of problem. So just keep in mind the rules for multiplying and dividing sign numbers are the same regardless of whether you're doing multiplication or division. Two numbers with the same sign are positive. Numbers with opposite signs are negative.